I never imagined a Wednesday morning could turn into a full-blown neighborhood nightmare, but that was exactly what happened the day HOA Karen tried to lock me out of my own home. I was halfway through my coffee when I heard a knock on the door that sounded more like a battering ram than a polite visitor. Peeking through the peephole, I saw her, Patricia Hendress, our self-appointed HOA queen, flanked by two overly eager security guards. Her lips were pursed in that familiar, "I'm about to ruin your day" expression. "You're in violation of the HOA guidelines," she announced before I could even say hello. "And as of today, your access privileges are revoked." I blinked. Did she just say revoked? I live here. This is my home. The audacity of it almost knocked the coffee out of my hand. Her list of alleged violations was laughable. One slightly overgrown hedge, a mailbox that leaned a fraction too much, and apparently, my choice of door color offended some obscure HOA aesthetic code. As she rattled off the infractions, I felt my blood pressure rise. But it wasn't just about the trivial rules, it was about the principle. I wasn't about to let some self-important busybody dictate who enters my own house. I calmly stepped aside, planning to reason with her. But reasoning was not in her vocabulary. Before I could speak, she pulled out a set of plastic-looking official keys. "We're locking this door today," she said, her tone dripping with smug authority. I froze. For a split second, a wave of panic hit me, but then a thought struck me. The only keys that truly mattered were mine. I refused to let fear dictate the situation. With a deep breath, I walked to my own key ring, jingling the keys in front of her like a warning shot. "You need to step back," I said evenly, my voice surprisingly steady, "because these are the keys that actually open this door." Her smile faltered. For the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker across her face. She had counted on intimidation and compliance. What she hadn't counted on was someone who knew their rights and wasn't afraid to enforce them. By the time she realized I wasn't going anywhere, a small crowd had gathered. Neighbors peeked out from their windows, sensing the tension, whispering questions that made her shift uncomfortably. And just like that, the power dynamic began to change. This was only the beginning. HOA Karen may have thought she held the keys to my home, but I was about to show her exactly who really does. The moment HOA Karen realized my keys were the ones that truly mattered, her confidence wavered, but she wasn't going down without a fight. She straightened her shoulders and attempted to reassert control. "You don't understand how this works," she snapped, pointing toward the security guards. "We have authority here. You'll comply or we'll call the police." I couldn't help but laugh. Authority isn't just about plastic keys or uniforms. It's about legality. And she clearly didn't understand either. "Go ahead," I said calmly, stepping aside so she could see my front door. "Call them. Let's see how that works out when they realize this is my property and I haven't done anything illegal." Her face reddened. The guards shifted awkwardly, glancing at one another like they hadn't expected to actually have to justify their presence. They weren't bullies, they were enforcers for someone who thought she could bend rules to her will, and that was her mistake. Neighbors had now fully emerged, drawn by the commotion. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others whispered their support. One even muttered, "She's gone too far this time." I felt a surge of confidence. Sometimes, having an audience isn't about showing off, it's about accountability. And HOA Karen was quickly realizing that the crowd wasn't on her side. She fumbled with her official papers, waving them like a shield. "According to HOA regulations, we can restrict access until compliance is met," she shrieked, but her voice lacked conviction now. And the papers looked more like props than proof. I stepped closer, keeping my tone even but firm. "You may think you have authority, Patricia, but these are private property rights. You do not and cannot lock me out of my home." Her jaw tightened. I could see the gears turning in her head as she tried to salvage the situation. But the more she struggled to assert dominance, the more ridiculous she appeared. Security guards looked increasingly uncomfortable, trapped between following orders and facing the legal reality that this was not their fight. I reached for my phone, casually opening the home security app. Cameras, door sensors, and timestamps all confirmed what everyone could already see. I was the homeowner, and I had every right to enter my property. The screen glowed in the early morning light, a silent reminder that truth was on my side. HOA Karen's composure cracked. She tried one last desperate attempt to regain control. "Fine, you think you're clever, but there will be consequences," before storming off, muttering threats that no one could take seriously. The crowd dispersed, leaving me standing in my doorway, triumphant but wary. This confrontation was far from over. I had won the first round, but HOA Karen's obsession with control meant she would return. And next time, she wouldn't come alone. The next few days were deceptively quiet. HOA Karen didn't show up at the door, but the tension in the neighborhood was palpable. I could feel her plotting something. It was the kind of silence that screams danger. Every creak of the gate, every rustle of leaves felt like a potential ambush. I had survived the initial showdown, but I knew better than to think the storm had passed. It started subtly. Anonymous notes tucked under my door, warning me about consequences for ignoring HOA rules. Each note carried the same condescending tone. "We are watching. Compliance is expected." I crumpled the first one, laughed off the second, but by the third, I realized this wasn't just petty theatrics. This was harassment, and it was escalating. Determined not to be intimidated, I began documenting everything. Photos of my perfectly maintained yard, videos of my entrances, and time-stamped logs of every interaction with HOA representatives. Every encounter, every attempt at intimidation became evidence. If HOA Karen wanted a war, she would find herself on the losing side. Then came the phone calls. Calls at odd hours, full of static and a voice dripping with fake concern. "You really should reconsider your stance," she warned once, the line cutting off before I could respond. Another call came days later, just breathing on the other end, enough to make it clear she wanted to unsettle me. I knew I had to stay calm. Retaliation wouldn't be by my hand. It would be through careful planning, legal backup, and exposing her antics for what they were. I reached out to a lawyer, someone experienced in HOA disputes. After reviewing my case, they assured me my rights were rock solid. HOA Karen had no authority to restrict my access or intimidate me into compliance. This wasn't just neighborhood drama anymore. It was harassment with potential legal consequences. The final push came unexpectedly. One evening, I noticed her pacing near the gate, peeking over the fence like a predator sizing up her next move. She had brought the same guards from before, but this time she seemed desperate, almost frantic. I stepped onto my porch, making sure she could see me clearly. "Calm, composed, and unafraid. Still thinking you can control my property?" I called out. My voice carried across the yard, leaving no room for doubt. She froze, the intensity of the moment sinking in. I wasn't backing down, and more importantly, the neighborhood had already seen her theatrics. Every threat, every attempt to intimidate me, had now become a liability for her. HOA Karen realized that her reign of terror was crumbling, but the question remained: how far would she go next? Now that her usual tactics had failed, the day of reckoning arrived without warning. I had prepared for this moment, but nothing could fully erase the rush of adrenaline as HOA Karen and her entourage appeared at my gate once again. This time, she wasn't just angry, she was desperate, her confidence replaced by visible panic. Her security guards looked equally uneasy, glancing around as if the neighborhood itself might rise against them. "I warned you," she hissed, stepping forward. "There will be consequences if you continue to defy the HOA. I met her gaze without flinching. "And I warned you," I replied calmly, "that no one can dictate what I do in my own home. Not you, not your guards, not your so-called regulations." She tried to storm the gate, but I was ready. My phone was in hand, recording everything. Security cameras had been checked, and I had the lawyer on standby, ready to intervene if necessary. This wasn't just about protecting my home, it was about holding her accountable for her reckless harassment. Before she could escalate further, a neighbor stepped onto the sidewalk, firmly placing themselves between her and my property. "This has gone far enough, Patricia," they said. "You're harassing someone in their own home. Step back." Other neighbors followed, forming a silent line of witnesses. Suddenly, the crowd wasn't just observing. It was a barrier, making her tactics futile. Her face turned a shade of red I hadn't seen before. The smug authority she had relied on evaporated instantly. She realized her intimidation no longer had power. Every attempt to assert dominance had been documented. Every threat and violation recorded. She had crossed the line, and now there was no safe way to recover her facade. I stepped forward, holding up my keys. "These are the keys that matter," I said firmly. "This is my property. You don't get to decide who comes in or who stays out." Her hands trembled slightly as she looked at the keys, symbols of control that she could never possess. By the end of the confrontation, HOA Karen and her entourage retreated, muttering half-hearted threats that rang hollow against the weight of truth and accountability. The neighborhood exhaled collectively, a quiet cheer of relief rippling through the crowd. I locked my door, not out of fear, but as a reminder that the only access granted here would be on my terms. Later, my lawyer confirmed what I already knew. Any future attempts by the HOA to restrict my access would carry serious legal consequences. I had defended my home, my rights, and my peace of mind. HOA Karen's obsession with control had been dismantled, not with rage, but with preparation, calm authority, and unwavering confidence. Standing on my porch that evening, I realized something important. Property rights aren't just about land or doors, they're about knowing your boundaries and never letting someone else cross them. Today, I showed who truly held the keys. The neighborhood had witnessed it, the law backed it, and I had lived it. If you enjoyed watching this showdown and want to see more wild HOA stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to like if you loved watching me stand my ground, and drop a comment below sharing your craziest neighborhood encounter. I'd love to hear your stories.